Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am here with 27 more questions of the INICET PYQ series, and today we will cover the topic stomach under the surgery section. Now INICET specifically focuses on these topics, and among these CHPS and carcinoma stomach are the most important ones. So let's get started. The first topic is congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, from which 9 questions have been asked in 6 unique ways. The first question is, congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis is associated with, it's associated with hypokalemic hypochloremic alkalosis with paradoxical aciduria. Now let's understand how does it cause so. When vomiting occurs, sodium, water and H+ are lost along with potassium. Now this increases the aldosterone release, which causes sodium and potassium reabsorption, and in exchange hydrogen is lost. So even in vomiting, any H+ are lost, it results into hypochloremic hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis, and when H+ is secreted into the urine, it increases H+ in the urine and cause paradoxical aciduria. Now the next question. A robust male baby with vigorous feeding and immediate vomiting at 2 months of age. The diagnosis. If it's a male baby and that also at 2 months of age with immediate vomiting and feeding, then the diagnosis is CHPS, congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. The most common signs and symptoms are vomiting being the most common, which will be non-bilious and projectile. The stomach would be empty and there will be a vigorous feeding, that is, the child would always be hungry. Now the signs include an olive-shaped lump in the epigastric region, and the peristalsis will be from the left to right, because the food has to be pushed from the stomach towards the duodenum. Now the third question. Congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis normally presents around 4 weeks after the birth. The normal average duration is actually 1 to 3 weeks. And they will present with vomiting and vigorous feeding, etc., as I just told you. Now this question was asked very recently, and it says, a child is diagnosed with congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Which among the following can be seen? The first option is bilious vomiting. No, I just now told you it will be a non-bilious vomiting because the obstruction is towards the pylorus and the biliary secretions occur after that. Visible peristalsis from right to left. It will be from left to right because the stomach is here and the pylorus is this side. Hypochloremic hypokalemia, just now I told you, and metabolic alkalosis because H+ is lost. So C and D will be the option. Now next, a 3-week-old patient presenting with vomiting, failure to thrive is found to have pyloric stenosis. What is the next step of the management? The very important signs and symptoms of these include the electrolyte loss. And since this CHPS is not an emergency condition, so the only thing we need to correct is the electrolyte disturbances, which can be harmful for the baby. So the answer would be the third one, correcting the electrolyte disturbances. Now important among here is, how will we correct it? So we give basically the half N/2 of saline with 5% dextrose and KCl. And our target should be, we need to reach the urine output to more than 1 ml per kg per hour and bicarbonate to less than 30 milliequivalents per liter. Now next question. Which among the following is not an ultrasound feature of the congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis? First of all, ultrasound is the investigation of choice in these conditions where it has an accuracy of 95%, or we can say the sensitivity of 95%. So the first statement is right. Now let's look at the findings in the ultrasound which are seen in the CHPS. So these are the findings where the pyloric changes show thickness of more than 4 mm, length of more than 16 mm and width of 14 mm. Now the stomach would be empty because all will be emptied out via vomiting. So this is very important. And the signs which are specifically found on the ultrasound, because this is the investigation of choice, I need you to mug up. These are the target sign, the antral nipple sign and the cervix sign. So coming back to the question, It says thickness of pylorus more than 4 mm, that's right. Channel length of more than 16 mm, that's right. High gastric residues, no, the stomach would be empty, so this is the answer. Now let's come to the next topic, and that is carcinoma stomach, which is very important. So 14 questions have been asked in 9 unique ways, so this makes this topic very important. So the first is the gist, from which the questions were asked before, not nowadays. Now the trend has shifted more towards the proper the intestinal or the diffuse gastric carcinomas, or to the maltomas. Now look at the first question. Sister Mary Joseph nodules are seen most commonly in which area? So they gave 4 options, the 4 sites, and they asked the most common one. So it will be carcinoma stomach, or the stomach is the area where these are most commonly found. Now you will tell me in the comment section what is the location of these nodules. Now there is a mnemonic, or we can say these are the 4 major area carcinomas where these nodules are found, and the mnemonic is SCOPE. So the stomach carcinoma, the colon carcinoma, the ovarian carcinoma, and the pancreatic carcinoma. The next question, indications for surgery in the gastric lymphomas. See, there are 3 indications for the surgery in lymphomas of the gastric lymphomas. The first one is the bleeding, the second is the perforation, and the third is when there is a residual disease following chemotherapy or the radiotherapy. So I have covered both these questions. Now the next question, see, this is the most recent topic. So it says identify the correct statement regarding the gastric carcinomas. The first statement is it is mostly hereditary. See, this is a wrong statement because the most common type are the intestinal ones, and intestinal ones are sporadic in nature. So this is a wrong statement. The hereditary ones are the diffuse variety, which are very rare. The second is the E-cadherin adhesion defects is seen mostly in the diffuse type of gastric carcinomas. So let's see. The WNT signaling pathway defects are most commonly seen in the intestinal type. Let's see. And the fourth is the depth of the carcinoma has no role in the prognosis. No, this is a wrong statement. Why won't the depth be an issue? Have you heard about linitis plastica? See, this is in-depth infiltration of the gastric carcinoma. So depth does have a very significant role in the prognosis, specifically the Japanese or the Blummer's classification. So with this we can exclude the options. So the answer would be B and C. Now let's look at the defects which are seen in both these types of gastric carcinomas. Now I need you guys to mug these up, because these questions are not only asked recently, but they were asked before also. So that is why doing all the 20 years PYQ is very important for this paper. Now in the diffuse type of gastric carcinoma, the most common defect is E-cadherin. Others are P53 and P16. And in the intestinal type, which is the most common type of gastric carcinoma, we have the WNT signaling defect, very important. Then we have the MSI, APC and P53 defect. Now these questions were asked previously also, so this makes this topic very important. Next, 50-year-old male presents with obstructive symptoms. The biopsy reveals GIST, the most appropriate marker. See, for GIST, we have the most appropriate marker as CD117 in 95% of the cases. Then in the GIST, we can also see CD117, BCL2, which is found in 80%, and CD34. So just learn these. And very important, look at the questions, the age of the patient, 50 years. If it had been a small child, it would have been CHPS. Now let's quickly do the investigations for them. So the question says gold standard investigation for recurrent gastrointestinal stromal tumors. Now here the answer would be PET-CT. See, the investigation of choice is CT scan for the primary tumors and the accurate staging के लिए, but for the recurrent GIST, the gold standard is PET-CT. And if we want to take the biopsy, then we have to do endoscopic ultrasound, because the CT guided biopsy is not preferred as it has increased risk of dissemination and bleeding. Another question, true about the GIST. So they give many statements, and among these some of the pointers about GIST are necrosis and ulceration is present in the GIST. The PET is used to assess the response to the therapy, and it is well circumscribed. So just mug up these points. Next question. Which of the following is not true about the GIST? See, it originates from the intestinal cells of Khazal. That's right. Most common mesenchymal tumor of the gastrointestinal tract. That is also right. The prognosis depends upon the size. Absolutely right. The AKL gene mutation is seen in most of the cases. Now this is wrong statement because AKL gene mutation have no association with the GIST tumors. Next question. True about gastric lymphomas. The stomach is the most common site, and it is associated with H. pylori infections, and the 5-year survival rate is only 60%. See, this is associated with H. pylori infection, where 80% of the gastric MALT lymphomas have this as a history. Now let's quickly look at the maltomas. See, stomach is the most common site, and when we have to do the treatment, we'll look at the grade. If it is a low grade maltoma, we will treat the H. pylori through the H. pylori eradication therapy. But if it is a high grade maltoma, it behaves like proper lymphomas, and then we have to treat it similar to them. Now, another few pointers. Most common benign tumors of the stomach are leiomyomas, and for the esophagus also it is leiomyomas. Similarly, gastric lymphomas, the most common extranodal site is stomach, and they are usually called as non-Hodgkin's B cell lymphomas. The clinical features include the GI hemorrhage, lump and pain. And in the surgery, very important, or in the treatment, if the patient has systemic disease or diffuse lymphomas, chemotherapy is the treatment, and where the mnemonic is R-CHOP. And for patients with localizing GI symptoms, we'll do the surgery. Also, in the residual and the recurrent disease, surgery is the treatment. Now let's come to the next topic, which is upper GI bleed. Now the very important topic under it was the esophageal varices, which we have covered in the previous video. Now the next very important topic is about the Mallory-Weiss tear. Now bleeding from the Mallory-Weiss tear occur usually because of the left gastric artery, and it is mostly an arterial bleed which stops spontaneously, and only supportive treatment is required. So Mallory-Weiss tear occur mostly when there is a history of drinking excessive alcohol. So in this, a partial tear occurs in this area of the stomach, and this is specifically after the second vomiting. And since it is a partial tear, there are symptoms are only mild with no peritonitis or pain. So we just need to give a supportive treatment, and no surgical repair is required. Now another very important DD for this would be the Borjev syndrome, which will present with severe peritonitis and pain because complete perforation is the cause for that. Now another very important topic is the peptic ulcers. 3 questions have been asked. We'll quickly do it. The most common site for benign peptic ulcer is the lesser curvature near the incisura angularis. Now second question, a 45-year-old gentleman undergoes truncal vagotomy and pyloroplasty, now presenting with intractable recurrent symptoms of peptic ulcers. Feature suggests the Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. See, this topic is important in medicine section, but we'll quickly do the criteria to define this. So the first is the basal acid output of 15 milliequivalent per hour, the serum gastrin value of 500 picograms per ml, and ulcer in proximal jejunum and lower end of the esophagus. Next question. 65-year-old patients of coronary artery disease taking aspirin for 24 years complains of black stools, and abdominal examination is normal. So the diagnosis is mostly duodenal ulcer. Just remember that history of any NSAIDs is related to ulcers in the stomach or the duodenum, most commonly the duodenal ulcers. Now with this we have completed the stomach portion, and only these topics need to be focused for the INI-CT exam. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe, because your responses are motivation, and keep watching our videos.